thank you. So I just have a few items I want to inform committee of. Just a reminder that the assessment notices will be mailed out this Friday, February 27th. And property owners are always encouraged to review their assessments and contact the assessment department with any concerns. The assessment department will try to work with the property owners to come to a mutual agreement. And if that's not achieved, then the owner can always file an appeal by May 6th, and that will go to the appeal board for review. Property tax rates will be coming forward to council for approval in April, and the tax notices will be mailed out on May 21st with a due date of June 30th. The Ipsos survey, we talked about this. That has been going on during the month of February, January and February, I believe. The phone calls were completed Friday, February 13th, and the online surveys were closed as of February 16th. So Ipsos will be compiling the data that they received and all the information. They'll produce a report, which will then come back to council for review, and we'll do a presentation at a council meeting. And then the last item is just to let you know that the 27-28 budget process is underway. Departments have already started working on those budgets. We've started reviewing the salary and wage templates, and we will be coming to council to discuss key budget assumptions for the 27-28 budget. So that will be coming shortly to council, either March or April-ish timeframe. And that's all for my updates today.
Well, the question through the chair, how do they know what to do without knowing our priorities? Yeah.
So good question. So right now what we're doing is we're just looking at our salary and wages and looking at what we currently have approved for positions, and then ensuring that they're appropriately reflected in the next budget cycle, and putting in some assumptions with wage increases based on contract negotiations and that sort of thing. So we haven't gone down the path yet. We're still waiting for council strategic priorities. That is a key element that we need to help us produce our budgets. So we're trying to do bits and pieces. This is a long process. And so we're trying to get through a few areas that we know that we can complete prior to getting the priorities.
So standard procedures for some of those things.
Correct. Yeah.
Happens every
Yes.
budget cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just have a question too, just so I understand, because this is my first go around at this. So once the budget is set, then we calculate the mill rate based on the assessment rule. And then is there opportunity after that then to have discussion on what that tax increase is versus potentially using some of reserves to offset some of it? We would have that discussion then.
Yeah.
April-ish.
Absolutely. Yeah. So council has set the tax revenue budget. That does not equate to the tax rate. The tax rate is based on the assessment valuations and then how we distribute those valuations across to collect the revenue that's been approved in the budget. So based on that, I'll provide a few scenarios that council can consider and what the tax rate impact would be for residents. And then council would have the opportunity to say, we approve, we don't, we'd like to do this or that. So yeah, absolutely. It is up to council to decide.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Anything else, guys? No. Okay, thank you for your report. We'll move on to the 2025 supply chain annual report.
Okay, great. So we have Tibor Domian, who's the manager of supply chain. He does go by Tivi, so just so that you're aware. He's going to provide the 2025 supply chain annual report, which will provide you with an overview of the city's procurement, stores, and accounts payable operations. The report describes the different procurement methods that are used at the city. It provides highlights of the open competitions conducted through the year, as well as 3-year comparative information of purchase order types and values, accounts payable payment types and values, and an overview of the inventory managed under supply chain. The report also provides a summary of the accomplishments achieved in supply chain during 2025, as well as a preview of the objectives for 2026. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tibi to walk us through the presentation.
All right, good morning. Nice to be here and nice to meet you formally. Yeah, so just to provide a little bit of context why we are bringing this report to you. Well, it's mandated in our policy that at least once a year we provide this report to council. So just to put it into context, how do I share? Okay, so supply chain sits within the finance department, and we have basically 3 areas that we cover. That would be procurement, accounts payable, and our warehouses. This includes central stores and fleet stores, and not the power plant. So to simplify, we buy things, we pay for things, and we store things for the city. And there's a general framework for procurement at the city. We are a public organization. We are spending public funds, taxpayers' dollars. So there are certain rules and regulations that we need to follow. Of course, there is public procurement principles, which is being fair, open, and transparent with our processes and equal treatment to our vendors. We have internal governance, external governance. So that would be like, Municipal Government Act, various trade agreements, like the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, the New West Partnership Trade Agreement. We also have our own city policies and procedures that guide how each individual within the city needs to behave, act, what rules to follow when they are conducting procurement on behalf of the city. And I mentioned here that proper valuation of a purchase is a pretty important part. The different trade agreements set they have different thresholds determining what our obligations are, whether where we need to advertise our competitions. So it is kind of important in the beginning to have a good idea of like how much something is going to cost, so you follow the appropriate actions afterwards. And altogether, supply chains and actually everybody's objective or goal should be within the city to maximize the expected return for taxpayers' dollars that we are sending while we are reducing the city's risk as much as possible. So these should guide all procurement actions.
Can I ask a question? When's the last time that we looked at our city policies and bylaws, reviewed them?
Yes, so the procurement policy was updated in 2022, I believe. And
Not long ago.
not that long ago, no. And that's when we put in place a longer, more detailed protocols to support the policy, and more detailed explanation, like what the policy can be like, just pretty straightforward points and stuff. So we created a longer document.
It's just a concern for me because things change so fast. And so when's our next time that we might look at that again? Is there a schedule that we look at our city policies and bylaws, like 5 years or 3 years or 10 years? Or
Yeah,
do we know what that is, or is it just as we need to?
it has been as we need to. However, we're trying to get better at doing that. So yeah, it will be like every 3 to 5 years to do a review.
So really,
But sooner if something
yeah, we're
is.
past the 3-year stage already.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can probably, if there's concerns, we can look at redoing something with that, if that's possible.
Absolutely. And that being said, it's going to come up later in my presentation, but basically the policy itself is the bare minimum in a sense that guides the principles, and the protocols that we have on the side is like the how-to.
Mhm.
And those we regularly update when there are changes.
So it's a little bit of a living document, I take it,
Yes, correct.
or we can add and take away. So, because some things will go away, I would imagine, correct? Okay, good, thank you. It's nice to do that as things happen, right, through our processes. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I forgot to mention in the beginning, please feel free to stop me anytime. And there are lots of numbers in the presentation. So if you are curious about some of them, or you want me to just go through because they're straightforward, let me know and then we can adjust. So just to give a little bit of idea the different methods of procurement at the city. So we have things called standard procurement, non-standard procurement, and emergency purchases. So emergency purchases would be more like disaster mitigation. So let's say we have a huge windstorm and infrastructure is down and we need to act right now. We need to call in a contractor to help us out restoring things. So that's like an emergency. Non-standard purchases would be like a non-competitive procurement. It's sort of rare, like for special circumstances when, for let's say for compatibility purposes, we only can buy a certain piece of material to replace it in an existing machinery, for example. And we have our standard procurement. This is the majority how we conduct our business. So this could be basically ordering from existing contracts. We have established, we call them citywide contracts. It's basically standing offers with contractors and suppliers. So for certain goods or services. So when you need something quickly and whatever we have a contract for, you don't need to go and do a full-on competition. You are able to utilize these standing offers with pre-negotiated terms and conditions and most of the time prices as well.
Sorry, to be just have a follow-up question. So obviously with Medicine Hat, we're unique and we have our energy division. So does procurement in this way, are they procurement for energy, or does energy have its own procurement?
We cover everybody in the city.
So that would be different than other municipalities, let's say Calgary or anywhere else where, you know, the energy companies of those would have all of their own, but here it's procurement. So then I imagine, would energy make up the majority of your procurement?
Not necessarily. On dollar-wise, probably, but as far as like number of purchases, not necessarily.
Okay. And to mention Director Pancoast, is that something? Is that like does that give us economies of scale to have that? Is that better that we have that, or does that add more challenges having procurement that maybe would be a little bit less nimble than, let's say, other non-municipal energy companies?
Thank you through the chair. I think it's a bit of a trade-off. It's a center-led approach where we do have individuals from the department engaged directly with suppliers to test what might be possible. We have supplies coming from Singapore, for instance, from throughout the United States. So we need to have a good understanding of the supply chain and the relationships and pricing regardless. But the opportunity in Tippy's area is to standardize and drive efficiencies in that process. So the magic happens when the two groups come together. If there is a gap, we have been encouraging our teams to get together to make sure that the business needs are being met while we're maintaining as much efficiency and standardization as possible.
And then we would still have to fall under the same transparency needs for that, right? Again, different than other municipalities or other energy companies where they don't need to necessarily be as transparent about their procurement. But obviously for us, we do because we're a municipality.
Yes, through the chair, there are certain exemptions that are reflected in the policy itself where we, I believe, for instance, some of our oil and gas transactions wouldn't necessarily be part of that. But yes, we do need to be mindful of requirements.
Okay, thank you. Or to be, thank you.
All right. Yeah, so other than ordering from existing contracts, we have low value purchases. This could be a low value purchase order or a credit card purchase. This would be below $10,000. That obviously doesn't mean that every employee can spend up to that. With credit cards, for example, we have set different limits based on roles and responsibilities within the organization. We have invitational competition, which is a fairly, I guess I shouldn't even say fairly new process because it was introduced with the last policy review. So basically that's allowing departments to take a little bit more lead in their own hand if they choose to. If the purchase is below $75,000, that's the threshold for for open competition that one of the trade agreements demand us to do. So basically, that's like you go get minimum 3 quotes, to compare, again, try to get the best value out of it, and departments can do it on their own, or they can ask procurement services, the centralized services, to do it for them. Or we also do open competitions over any value when we just really want to hit the open market and give a chance for everybody who is out there. So
Can I ask a question on that part with the invitational competition? I'm getting a lot of feedback, so I'm just wondering, can our departments also give a bid on that? Just so that we know where we're at with spending. Is that possible? Where the department actually puts a bid in to do the job also? Is that possible?
Invitation,
like,
Like if there's a job out there that we
I
invite people to do it,
You would want
our
to-
own department can put a bid in as to what it would cost to do the bid in-house, right? Because we always get told that it gets done easy or less by doing it in-house, right? So that's my concern, what's out there in the construction community, that I don't know if that's possible to do that or not.
maybe some context behind that. When we're going out for competition or invitational competition, we've exhausted our internal resources. And so we are looking for someone else to perform the work for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we do any internal stuff to say, well, we're close to that number, or we know where the numbers are?
Of how many we've done, or
Well, no, but how much it costs to do the job? If we did
an analysis.
if it was us to do the job, what would it be at, right? Before we actually send it out to, and that's why we do it, is to send it out to
Yeah, I think it's
the competitors.
that we've exhausted our internal resources and we don't have the capacity to do this
Okay.
work, or it is specialized work that we need
Somebody else to do.
someone else to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will share through the chair, there are cases where if there are concerns that we think we're uncompetitive and others can do it faster or cheaper,
Right.
that can prompt a business case specifically for that service area. I know we have looked at certain areas of the city in the
Have we?
past.
Yeah.
Because it is that question of, do we
Yeah.
insource, do we outsource, what's most competitive? And
Right.
we are mindful that it is public purse, so we need to be chasing. the most
That's my
competitive
concern
part.
too, right? That we're doing our due diligence on that too, right? That please don't say that we can do it for cheaper. Well, then do it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Rather than going out to the competitive market, right? So,
And I'll offer that we wouldn't do that with every RFP,
No,
because once
no.
we have staff, it's
Yeah.
more of a fixed cost. But
Mhm.
there are times when we can consider changing the model, and
Right.
we need to do that analysis
Right.
very carefully.
okay, yeah, because I'm hearing it from contractors, right? So of the process, right? So, thank you.
Great. So the next slide is about just a little bit of comparison of the last 3 years of open competitions that we have completed. The annual numbers are fairly similar, around 120 plus minus a couple competitions that we do openly. Majority of them are requests for proposals. And you can see how many contracts we awarded from these competitions in the last couple of years. We deal somewhere between, again, it depends on the year. 2023 was a little bit higher because we had a lot of these citywide contracts getting put in place that I mentioned earlier. Those are shared between departments. So 2025 was a little bit less. I know this year we are having to redo a lot of those citywide contracts. Contracts values on this slide. Again, it may not seem that much, but just to mention, that would include only the first year of the contract. If we have like a 5-year contract, most of the contracts are, we go with like annual extensions. So we only commit 1 year at a time. Again, like this is fairly new the last couple of years. We started to include like the breakdown of the value of our contracts regionally, provincially, and other. This was an ask from the chamber a few years ago to provide this sort of depth to our report. So we try to listen and try to adopt on the go and provide what, if there is anything else that they need, we try to work with them. This slide basically just breaks down the procurements by categories, how we spend our money. So very consistent. The last 3 years, the city's spend on purchases, it hovers around that $160 million range. Last year it was 165. Very consistent through the years. I don't know if there is too much to add to this. As I really like to see the big green one on the left hand side, like the money that we spend through competitive processes is the majority, right? Like that's essentially 75% of our purchases altogether. Credit card spend is down a little bit. In emergencies, we don't really have too much control over it. If it happens, it happens.
Sorry, low value, that's just things that we don't necessarily need to be going and getting RFP for. That's things like whatever, the cups in here,
Well,
or like, is that, I mean, obviously, what would be low value, I guess is a better.
right. So those would be, yeah, ad hoc small purchases. So for example, cups, well, we do actually have a contract with Staples, for example, to provide the cups. A lot of the things we buy, we try to have contracts for, so it's not like an ad hoc purchase. Low value purchases could be, I need spare parts and we don't have, something breaks, right? And I need to run and buy something quickly because we don't keep it on our shelves in our warehouse to repair something. And again, circling back to 2 slides ago, so basically every purchase over $10,000 requires some sort of competition, at least do your due diligence. And it is also encouraged for the low value purchases. You know, the same as when you make a decision at home to buy a new TV, you do your due diligence and figure out which is the best value for you, or right. So even though it is not required to do get 3 quotes, for example, it is encouraged that people do their due diligence with those lower value purchases.
So another question, just help, I just want to get in the weeds for a second because it'll help me understand a little bit more. But I'll take an example. So we have hundreds of vehicles, right? I don't know exactly how many vehicles we have in the city, but quite a bit. Now, do we have and they're going to need parts all the time. Do we have a contract with a parts supplier? And therefore we stock or we're able to get parts for those vehicles, or are those considered all low value? And when a part breaks, we go and buy that part?
No, so basically later on you will see when I talk about stores, we do have a fleet stores, a warehouse. So we stock parts at the warehouse, quite a few parts actually. And most of those parts come through contracts. Like we would have multiple contracts with multiple suppliers, so we don't just depend on one.
Yeah, depending on the vehicle.
Yeah, exactly, and availability. So
Thank you.
So I also, through the chair, inventory, like, so it's, what is it, 7.8 million, 6.5, 7.4. So is this the norm, like to keep that much inventory on hand? I know in some departments like yours, you probably need it for in case something's instant that has to be done, and you keep that in place. But what about for the rest of it? Like, that's a lot of money in
I
inventory.
think Tibby will be getting to those slides.
Or you get into that later.
Yeah.
So
The in-store thing.
Yes.
Okay,
Hold
okay.
your question till then.
I will answer you in that.
Just like to justify the numbers as to whether it's too much, too little, or where we're at and how we do that, right? So, because that's a lot of money.
Again, this is not too much to say about this slide, but just a visual of that $165 million that last year in 25 is spent on purchases. Basically 97.5% of that stayed within Canada. So that's, you know, like the other, it was 2.2% of that going to US vendors, and less than 0.5% to 9 other countries. So again, this is just like a quick visual. This was a hot topic last year. A lot of people asked about it, like where does our money go? So we added this into our report as well. And yeah, the next slide basically just so about 76% of our spend, so $122 million stays within Alberta, and about half of that stays within Medicine Hat and an immediate area. So in our region, that would be Dunmore, Redcliffe, Desert Bloom, Cypress County, basically. So here we're switching over to our warehouses. So yeah, like our total value of our inventory is about $8.9 million. You can see that electric distribution is our biggest internal customer. A lot of the items that we store, we need that for keeping our infrastructure working. And to answer your question, a lot of the items that we store, they are hard to find, or like the lead times are getting ridiculously long. So, like something that a couple of years ago, you used to be able to order something and get it in 6 weeks. Now that's 2 years. So that that plays with like how much stuff we need to have on hand. And our warehouse team is working with the departments to try to forecast as much as possible and figure out like what is the minimum order what is the minimum inventory level we need to have for certain items, what is the maximum, and when we need to order things.
Just to follow up this one, I think it's an important note. So going back to electric, so this is with electric distribution, almost $9 million in inventory, but then we have another 11.4 million with electric generation. So ultimately, that's like $20 million in the inventory the city would be holding at any time, right? But why do we hold electric distribution, but we don't hold electric generation?
So they do, it's just.
I
not-
think it's
sorry, I'm just-
centralized. Yeah, so within our corporate services, we would look after electric distribution, but generation is looked after through the power plant. So they administer their own inventory.
Yes.
And it's just
That's
more for convenience of doing that and having access available for, as they're operating, they operate 24/7. If something
right.
breaks down, they need access to it right away.
That's right.
Yeah.
So electric generation power plant, they don't have to go through to get their part or get their inventory. They don't have to go through
They
the centralized. It's all there.
they have their own
Yeah.
inventory staff that would take care of and manage their
Yeah.
inventory on site.
That makes sense. Though.
Yeah.
Thank you. But just so I'm understanding, the value of their inventory
Yeah.
is greater than the value of all the other inventory put together.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, and yeah, so and even for the electric distribution part, that's 71%. So that equals a little bit over $6 million, right? But when you have transformers that are $150,000 each, that adds up fairly quickly, right? For cable, and those are not cheap items. And fleet stores, just to circle back to your concern. So fleet stores is about $900,000 worth of inventory sitting on shelves. That went up a little bit the last year. Again, we do have our vicinity buses on the roads, and that company is going out of business. So we try to stack up on parts so we can support them to the end of their life cycle, right? So it fluctuates. But yeah, like we try to plan ahead and provide services consistently.
So through the chair, in your books, is that a good strategy? Is it a good strategy to do it that way?
Well,
Just
could ask
Yeah,
backwards, like, so if the buses won't run tomorrow because we don't have spare parts,
right.
are the citizens gonna be happy or sad with us, right? So yes, it is sort of a necessary thing for a lot of items.
Through the chair, just to highlight, we, on the energy side in particular, because we are seeing longer lead times coming forward and significant inflation. I'm asking the teams to revisit these supply chain strategy. It may be that we may need to see significant increase in our inventories just to cover the risk of accessing first. So just a highlight, I know working capital is never easy. It's nice to keep that as
I think we
low
know-
as possible, but we're at a space
I
where
think we
may
know
have to
that
increase
through
it.
the energy department,
Yeah.
that it's, the lead time is crazy, right? If an engine goes down and we don't have another one, it's a problem.
It used to be that,
Yeah.
as noted, we could budget within year. And now we're looking at budgeting 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
to get access to trigger it now for something 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
ago.
Which is crazy, but
Well, and to add to that, there are certain suppliers that we can get better pricing if we commit to a bigger order at one time, right? So that plays into the strategy a little bit too. But this slide, again, it's a very simple one, but it should give it a little bit of perspective what we are dealing with lately. So on the left side, that shows how many different items we have on our shelves, essentially. So in 2025, we had about 459,000 pieces of items on our shelves, right? So 3 years earlier, it was a little bit over 500,000, so not that much different. And the value of our inventory went up, like $600,000. Or earlier, for like, it's not on my slide because it was the years before, but the same amount, like 500,000 pieces of inventory, was about $6.9 million, right? So things are getting expensive. We have less items on our shelves, and the value of our inventory has gone up significantly. So, and again, like whatever we used to be able to place an order and get it in like 4-6 weeks, now we are waiting like 1-2 years for things. Accounts payable is also part of our team. Just a little bit of context, so we have roughly about 25,000 invoices we process in a year. So if I do the math backwards for my 3 clerks, that's that's a lot of work for them. They essentially process about 100 invoices a day. A couple of years ago, we implemented an artificial intelligence tool for helping the work at accounts payable. Multiple years going back, we lost a position there through the financial fit initiatives at the city. And the team was always behind, like the backlog of invoices was pretty high for registering them. So we implemented this artificial intelligence tool. This basically helps with essentially reading information from invoices and enters it into our ERP system. So the AP clerks, the accounts payable clerks, don't need to manually key in a bunch of numbers and information. They review what the system has pulled out and entered, and they will correct if needed, but the accuracy is like about 90%. So that's very helpful. That definitely made work more efficient for the team. Again, this slide is just a little bit of visual of like how much money is going through our accounts payable team. Last year, it was about $400 million. You may see, like, it might look like there was a big drop from 23 to 24 and 25. In 2023, we were spending a lot of money. We were establishing our investment portfolio, so we were moving more money. Basically, there was nothing extra significant happening there. On the left side, it's basically just like how many checks we issue in a year, how many wire payments, and how many EFT payments. So again, just a funny story to postal strikes, as frustrating as they are. each time it encourages our vendors to register for EFT payments because then they don't need to wait for the check in their mail. So there is a little bit of good in all the pain that we go through occasionally. Couple of highlights from 2025. We continued our efforts to establish and maintain our citywide contracts. As I said, those are shared contracts between departments. We have about 32 different categories and 63 different suppliers that are on different contracts with us. This was actually in 2024, but I thought I mentioned it. In 2024, we did review our procurement bylaw. It was not reviewed for a very long time before. And the signing of procurement contracts got subdelegated to the city manager, and the city manager subdelegated to myself. So this is again something that was a complaint from our contractors, that it takes a long time to get contracts in place, right? Even after you're awarded. So basically we were able to reduce like a 15-day turnaround to sign an agreement to two and a half days. So that was a very welcomed move from our contractors, and the feedback that we got from our local construction association and chamber, they welcomed this change. We did put in place like a service level agreement for our warehouses. This document basically just defines who is doing what are the responsibilities of the departments and our stores team. Again, it just filled a gap that wasn't necessarily there before. We had multiple reviews of our procurement processes through the last couple of years, through the special area of focus when auditors came in. Last year, we adjusted our procurement protocol a little bit. Going back to your question about invitational purchases, there were a couple of things that they suggested that we make changes to how we keep documents, records and stuff. So basically we made adjustments. And yeah, we had pretty good collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce and the Construction Association. We meet regularly. We updated our procurement website, the content on our site. That was basically all initiated by Lisa. And we worked together with John from Construction Association, like what is important information to our contractors, to our vendors. So we worked on that. We attend their meetings. They invite us. We were at the Spring Roundtable event where we had like chance to sit down and talk to suppliers one-on-one, face-to-face. Probably you are aware that last year there were some changes to the FOIP Act. So when those changes were put in place, we were able to go and be part of the Construction Association's meeting and just discuss like how does it affect purchases. We try to have an open discussion with the associations. It's important to us to collect feedback from them. And yeah, and what we are looking at this year coming, we would like to continue working with our inventory management optimizations, working with departments. Supply chain is a support group in a sense that our job is to enable the different departments to do their job. So they don't need to worry about sourcing things, where to get things. We are there to support. And it requires a lot of discussion and dialogue, but that's something we try to continue this year. We are also trying to, we are going to solicit feedback from departments about our procurement processes. So again, ties into your question, like, yes, like we try to engage with our partners internally, externally, and our ERP system, we implemented some processes a couple of years ago. It's been like 2022. So 4 years now. So it's time to hear, like, is this working? Did we get out of it what we wanted? Is it working for the departments? And we would like to hear their feedback on our procurement processes and experience in general. We are looking at our citywide contracts that I mentioned. I keep talking about them. Currently, our practice is that typically we would do a competition and we would award a contract for like up to 5 years, like maybe 1 or 2 year initial with extensions. So again, talking to our departments, to construction association, we are thinking about maybe shortening those a little bit, like maybe do 3 years maximum. So competitions would go out to market more often, right? So give a chance. If you didn't win this time, maybe it comes up sooner and you have another chance to compete for contracts. And yeah, like, and then again, a big thing is we are going to be spending a lot of time supporting some cloud migration for our ERP system. That is a supply chain is kind of a big user of our ERP system. So it's going to take us some time and energy to support those changes that IT is driving. And that was the last slide. So thank you for your attention. I'm not sure if you have any questions.
Chair, how many stores do we have?
How many stores?
Yeah.
So we have
City stores.
central stores and fleet stores. They report to supply chain, and we also have the power plant warehouse. So 3.
So 3. Okay.
A lot. Appreciate this. There's a lot that it brings up for me, and I'll have some further just questions. And after I kind of digest some of this a little bit more, but appreciate this. Obviously, like this data shows me like that the city of Medicine Hat is among the largest, if not the largest, I would say organization or company within Medicine Hat in terms of inventory, in terms of value. I mean, there's maybe I don't know if, like, I don't think CanCar would be up there or, right? So it's, yeah, it's big. And obviously it being, you know, it being public money, it's extra important that we do this right. And so I just, yeah, I appreciate the insights for sure. I know there's a lot of work behind all this. So follow-up question. We must make some money from selling, like we're not going to use all of these parts, right? Like sometimes we're going to buy a part and it doesn't, let's say something changes. Do we keep track of that? How much money do we make in, or do we recover in, like when we sell a truck, when we sell a bus, when we sell those sorts of things? Is there anything behind that?
So are you saying when, like after the
After
use
life.
of that?
Yeah.
Life?
Yeah, like we don't just throw a truck out in the dump. We'll sell it to somewhere.
There's some salvage value
Yeah.
on that. So I would say it's not a significant amount, but it's like selling your used vehicle, right? You use it for 10 years. I think we also repurpose some of our vehicles where if they're not appropriate to be used on the highway for some departments, that will repurpose it to parks because they do a lot of in-town driving and commuting. So it makes it, we get a second life out of the vehicle, but yeah. So by the time it gets to that point, I don't know how much salvage, you know, it's pretty minimal that you would have a salvage value on that.
But do we have a process? Like, I know this is, I'm kind of picking on a tiny thing because in the grand scheme of things, this is minimal. But, you know, we see these trucks driving around the city of Medicine Hat, especially for the electric utility. And these have to be some of them $500,000 trucks. There's got to be at the end of the life, like there's got to, like, do we have a process where we're done with something and we kind of put it out? Or do we have like a contractor that we would give
Yeah,
those to?
do you want to talk to?
Yeah, so typically, right. So yeah, in our procurement policy, we do have a section for disposal.
Yeah.
There are multiple ways, right? Like you can, if you don't use anything, as Lola mentioned, like you can move it to a different department. They might use it internally. We can scrap things and we take things to auction.
Auction.
Yeah, so fleet vehicles would be basically auctions. It would go to auction for inventory items. We do try to work, our store keepers are trying to work with vendors and try to sell things back to them and recover some money, right? Or they would refurbish things. We can sell it back. We don't use it anymore. It's not part of our system anymore. And that money goes back to the departments.
I bought a truck from city
You did, eh?
through auction.
Yeah, so that-
For my company.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Yeah, I thought,
It's running good and great for us. So,
thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions?
no. If I do, I'll send it on later.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Item number 3, grant review development.
Yes, so we have Melanie Friesen, who is our grant revenue development specialist with us today. She's going to provide a presentation to committee to provide an overview of the grant process, what grants have been approved, what is pending, and what has been declined. And we'll also highlight some of the 2026 opportunities that we're seeing right now. So with that, I will turn it over to Mel to walk through the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I am pleased to be here today to share the grant revenue development review for this year. So today I'll walk through the types of grants that we manage. Sorry. I usually have my,
It's not advancing on us, whatever's happening there.
Gonna skip to the for me, like if you do the arrow, it should be.
oh. Was.
In the left-hand corner of your screen. Can't see it unless you have your mouse.
So why is it not?
Right. Maybe just stop sharing and then try and reshare. It might be how you got it. How did you? Do your window. Still up. Yeah, you're not. That's weird.
Is it frozen or something?
Really?
Yeah, maybe just try leaving and coming.
Sure.
You know?
And she's just gonna try and get back in and we should be on.
No matter where you are, like I've been in multi-billion-dollar corporations and it's the same issues, right?
Wait till it doesn't.
Yeah, it works great. And then all of a sudden it just.
See, it's shared.
You can go to slideshow. There you go.
Okay, now.
There you go. Ah, you're good.
Oh, we got it going slow. Okay. Take 2.
All right.
She said.
We're ready to continue with the presentation. All right, go ahead.
Okay,
Mel.
sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. So today I'll walk through the types of grants that we manage. I'll provide a summary of the 2025 competitive grant results. I'll share the 2026 year-to-date status, outline the implications of the Provincial Priorities Act, and highlight emerging provincial and federal funding opportunities that will shape our strategy to maximize the impact of city investment moving on.
I just have a question for clarity, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but it's a simple question. simple answer, but when we're talking about grants, we are specifically talking about grants from the provincial and federal government that this city is applying to help offset some of the costs that we have for whether it's infrastructure or programs, things like that. Like,
Correct.
that's what we're talking about.
There's two different types of grants, and I will definitely distinguish between those two.
Thank you.
Okay, so at a high level, we manage two types of grants: allocation-based grants and competitive grants. Allocation-based grants are formula-driven and more predictable. They are based on factors like population, kilometers of road, and tangible capital assets. You may be familiar with these couple of capital funding. First is the provincial program, which is the Local Government Fiscal Framework, or LGFF, formerly the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, or MSI. And then the other one is the Canada Community Building Fund, or CCBF, and that's formerly the Gas Tax Fund. So these programs require a municipality to submit a list of eligible projects for approval before receiving their annual allocation. Municipalities are not obligated to use their entire allocation the year it's received, and may carry forward dollars to future years of the program. Competitive grants, on the other hand, are typically awarded on the merit of an application and are project specific. They require project readiness, alignment with council and corporate priorities, and internal coordination. This is where the effort and strategy can influence outcomes.
That's another question.
Yep.
I appreciate it. And just being new to all this, like a lot of it is just trying to figure out where we sit with this. So we hear all the time about, getting provincial or federal funding, and a lot of times specifically provincial funding. We hear, provincial government funds municipalities. Is this the only way that our municipality gets provincial funding, is through grants, or are there other ways that the province gives us money that we don't have to apply for? It's just automatic.
That would be the allocation grants.
Okay.
Allocation-based grants.
But you still kind of have to apply for them, don't you, or no?
No, not just as a virtue of being a municipality.
Okay.
You get the CCBF and LGFF.
So you're not applying for them, but you're saying this is what they're for.
Yeah.
Is that,
That's fine for the project.
That's right.
So they want to make sure that your project qualifies for that funding. You get every municipality gets a certain amount of funding, and then you have to apply for what
What
projects
you
you want
use
to.
the funds for, yeah.
But you can't get rejected for those? Like, let's say if the project doesn't align with, or like,
If it doesn't fit the criteria of the framework of LGFF or CCBF.
okay,
But it's pretty standard that it's, our infrastructure, for municipal infrastructure, that we're able to get covered through those grants. So they're pretty standard type grants that we would get, and we utilize them on an annual basis. So we have projects like maintenance of our roads and our bridges and stormwater and so on. So those are things that we're always working on. And so we'll always utilize those allocated based grants.
Yeah, so through the chair, when they say sport, what is sport? Like, what is it eligible for? What do they mean by sport?
Recreation and sport.
Like, what is the guidelines on sport?
I think these are the main categories, and I think they go into a little bit more specifics.
Oh, okay.
I don't have that with me,
But-
but those are the main categories
Right.
for both LGFF and CCB.
Okay, because sport could be
It's pretty generic.
this big, right? So, and recreation also could be that big too, right? So I just wonder how that gets divvied up in the end or is that up to us to do that? Get that funding?
Yeah, so we would determine what we're going to use that funding for based on the projects that we have
Okay,
approved through our budgets, right? So yeah, we will determine what we use, but we do have to follow the criteria that they've set out within each of these areas.
but to me, the sticker is how much money they give us, because it's not consistent, correct?
It's based on an allocation, and Mel will kind of show how that's fluctuated a bit over time, but yeah.
But I don't I don't think any projects have ever been rejected for
No.
funding through either of these programs.
No.
So on that, to follow up, let's say Medicine Hat had a, bright idea of building a brand new rec center, right? And we wanted to do that. Would we know exactly how much that we're gonna get from the provincial government? Let's say it's $100 million. Would we go through this and we'd know, okay, well, based on this, this and this, the provincial government's gonna give us X amount, or would that vary depending on number of factors?
So if the city decided to spend that LGFF or CCBF money on that specific project, it would just offset the funding for other projects.
Okay.
So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
That's right. It's coming from somewhere in your budget.
Yeah.
If you were gonna use it, let's say for Big Marble or all these other, whatever it was,
Right.
now you're using it for
Taking it
this,
big.
but you still have to pay the expenses over there. Okay, thank you.
So I just have one quick question too. If we, I'm talking about like an emergency shelter. Does this fall into that if we're asking for money from the province for that, or is that something totally separate where they would own the facility and we're not asking them for a grant of any kind? Does that?
I think that's more probably in a competitive.
Yeah,
grant
competitive
process.
or even discretionary grant, which means it doesn't fall under any specific program. At times, certain projects can be funded through a non-program grant by either level of government. Doesn't necessarily have to fit under certain program requirements. So the big announcements like that are typically either competitive grants or sort of a one-off, I call it discretionary, but non-program grants.
Okay, something out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is where most of this report is focused on the competitive grants. But before we get to them, this is just a snapshot of what is happening with the allocation-based grants. So the LGFF and CCBF. So this slide shows the 10-year trend in our two primary allocation-based capital grants, the LGFF and the CCDF. So LGFF is the provincial one and CCBF is the federal one. The stacked bars represent the annual allocations for the city from both programs, and the dotted line is the 3-year rolling average to smooth out some of the volatility. Over the past decade, these total capital grant allocations have averaged approximately $15.4 million. However, in recent and in forecasted numbers, allocations were well below that number. At 12.2 million in 2024, 13.2 million in 2025, and just under 13 million in 2026. So breaking that down by program, you can see that the federal CCBF has slightly declined from its historical average of just under 4.3 million down to 3.7 million in 2026. And the provincial LGFF in 2026 is well below the 10-year average of 11.1 million, coming in at 9.2 million. So the key takeaway is that allocation-based funding, while it's stable and formula-driven, it's not growing at the pace of capital pressures. And this reinforces why competitive grants are becoming increasingly important in closing funding gaps and supporting strategic initiatives.
I think, yes.
Follow-up question. So we know in 2021, I'm just trying to look at the outliers. 2021 was COVID. Now, is that what explains the 18.5? Is that where that came from?
So in 2021, they front-loaded 3 years of that.
Okay, and then that's why we have less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2024 seems to be an outlier, or sorry, 2014 is an outlier as well. Is there anything that happened there?
Well, that's the flood.
Okay,
Related to the
Right.
flood.
okay, that makes sense.
Stimulus
Okay.
provide,
Extra funding for.
Yeah.
yes,
Thank you.
yeah, but also proportionately lower.
Yeah.
afterwards.
So through the chair, has there been any downloading from the provincial government on with the budget coming today? Because the way they were talking at Alberta Munis, there's no money for nothing. So that's how they were talking. That's what the finance minister said. Sorry, guys. He looked down at all his ministers and said, you're not going to get very much money this year. So because
There is
our deficit's so huge now, right? So I'm just worried about this kind of stuff where we'll probably see a drop in this now. Yeah.
So the LGFF provincial funding, when it changed from MSI to LGFF, it's now tied to provincial revenues.
So we might,
Yeah.
can't
So,
bet on getting a lot of money from there then.
yeah, and it's on a 3-year delay now. So 2027's LGFF allocation will be based on revenues from 24-25.
Through the chair, I think that's important for us as counselors to know some of those dollar figures to our strategic planning over the years. Like if we know that the money's not going to be there, like we can't have this elaborate what we're going to do within our community, correct? So it'd be nice to kind of know where that's at, right? As to having lofty goals, but not even getting close to being able to do anything like that. Right?
And like you said, budget 2026 will be announced this afternoon.
Yeah,
So,
so,
yeah, speculation is that it will be a large.
so we're probably going to have to reboot again as to what we're going to get from the province and
Yeah.
probably.
Definitely a trend. Shifting now to competitive grants. So since we've started consolidated grant tracking in 2023, competitive grant revenue has increased year over year. The city's competitive grant funding increased by 23% in 2024 and by 32% in 2025. So these increases in grant funding can be influenced by a number of different factors. Number one is the availability of funding. So different years, this varies year by year, the number of grant programs that are open, the size of the allocated budgets for each of those programs can vary. And also the timing of the provincial and federal budget cycles can affect that. Factor number two is our grant philosophy. So, or the appetite to pursue emerging opportunities versus focusing strictly on approved capital projects to affect results. So for example, a good example is the $1.7 million investment in tree planting that positioned us to leverage a one-time grant opportunity with a 50% matching requirement. So while we do have a modest tree planting budget every year, the long-term strategic cost savings enabled us to accelerate this investment, the implementation, realizing the benefits sooner rather than in small increments over many years. And thirdly, the most importantly, the organizational readiness and execution for these grant funding. It also influences grant funding. Success with competitive grants can largely depend on things like early awareness of funding programs, sufficient lead times following announcements, the quality of the grant writing, and level of engagement with key internal stakeholders. Next is the multiplier effect. This shows the leveraging effect of city investments in grant-funded projects, demonstrating how grant revenue extends the impact of municipal dollars. So most recently in 2025, the city contributed just under $4 million of funds to 21 grant-funded projects. That investment leveraged an additional $7.2 million in external grant funding, equal to a 1.8 times return.
That's a good slide.
Tells a good story. In 2025, 21 applications were approved for a total of $7.2 million. And these projects are itemized in the appendix of this application for reference. But 8 of those approved applications were made for community development projects, including a housing needs assessment, an ancestor reburial project, transit route implementation plan, Esplanade arts programming, summer student wage subsidies, and community safety programming. So this is followed by facilities management in the black there, with 3 approved applications for the Hill Pool Solar Structure Project and 2 energy efficiency lighting projects at Southridge Rec Center and Adalta. And then economic development, environmental utilities, parks and rec, and people services each had 2 grants approved in 2025. And environment and fire also each received 1 grant.
Ask a question. In future, can we, with the acronyms, we put a line at the bottom that says what they are?
Yes.
Could that be possible?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Acronyms are our life, I know, but there's too many to remember.
In there.
So just if that's
Great point.
possible.
Yes, thank you.
So this slide shows the breakdown of total grant revenue by department in 2025. So 56% of total grant revenue awarded last year went to the environmental utilities, EU department. This is largely due to a $3.2 million grant approved through the province's drought and flood protection program for the wastewater treatment facility shoreline protection project. Next, in the blue is a 25% of total grant revenue awarded last year went to Parks and Rec Department. And this was largely due to the $1.7 million tree planting grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And then 13% of grant revenue awarded last year went to Community Development Department for 8 projects that I previously mentioned. And that leaves another 6% distributed amongst the rest of the departments. Looking now at competitive funding sources. So in 2025, 62% of funding came directly or indirectly from provincially funded programs, and 38% from federally funded grant programs, reflecting a significant shift from the breakdown observed in the prior 2 years. 2 takeaways from this slide is number 1, it illustrates how budgets and programs can fluctuate very widely from one year to the next. And then number 2, how the distribution of funding, given the new provincial legislation, could potentially affect future federal grant revenue, which I will touch on in the upcoming slides. So this slide provides a snapshot of our competitive grant pipeline and recent outcomes. So starting with pending applications, we currently have 6 applications under review, totaling approximately $4.3 million in requested funding. These projects span multiple departments, including airport, municipal works, fleet, environment, people services, and economic development departments. It also shows that we had 5 applications declined in 2025, the bulk of which was a $4.5 million capital infrastructure grant application to the province. So whenever possible, I do debrief with funders for feedback on applications. Rejections of applications can occur for a variety of reasons, including incomplete or less competitive applications, oversubscription of available funding, geographic concentration considerations, and shifting political or advocacy priorities.
Thank you, the chair. So you're saying the largest was 4.5 out of that 5.5 was for capital. So is that the 3rd Street? Is that the water main? Yeah, obviously very expensive, right? So I imagine the province looked at that and said, well, you're applying for it from a competitive, but it's a you know, it's a city infrastructure, so you can get it through the non-competitive, I can't remember what we called those, I should.
Yeah.
The allocated grants. Is that kind of the thinking there, or like,
That isn't, so that $4.5 million grant application was a new program that was announced in 2024.
okay,
It was announced, it was a 3-year program, $60 million, $20 million a year, 15 million for communities our size. 45 communities were eligible to apply for that funding. And probably about 6 months later, it was clawed back. The first year was clawed back, and the second year and third year were canceled. And when you look at the communities that were approved, in the stream that we applied for, which was in the growth stream for capital infrastructure, the city of Lethbridge got, I think it was 53% of that funding in one project.
or something similar, like infrastructure?
It was for a water-related project. Yeah. And that's what the funding was for.
Yep.
That's where the other factors tend to,
Yeah, and that would have been great to have 4.5 million for the Third Street would have been huge, right? So I can see where that, yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
very disappointing.
Yep.
That one. That one hurt.
Yeah, and that happens when you're applying for these. There's going to be ones that you're like, really wanted to get that,
Yeah.
right? So that makes sense.
So through the chair, do we apply again for these kinds of things?
We apply whenever they're available, but it's the entire program's been defunded.
So is there other grants that are coming out that are gonna be able to do this kind of stuff? Or,
So
yeah, so when do you find that out?
I get.
Oh, you're gonna
a
get,
few of them,
okay.
Yeah, that one, it was announced like the last week of October. We had 5 weeks to get an application in. We needed a council resolution in about 6 weeks or 7 weeks. It was very, very, very
short timeline.
short timeline and a lot of work. And I think there was only about 6 communities that ended up getting funding through that.
So just another question, the follow-up is, applications are done all through the year, I take it? Or are they done at a certain time of the year?
For that particular.
Or any application that we fill out?
Varies.
It varies all the way through the year, I take.
Some are recurring every year, and so you can kind of anticipate that they're gonna come open. But those, I'm definitely seeing a move towards more one-off strategic announcements rather than like the recurring programs. So which makes it even more important for us to be,
Ahead of the game,
ready.
ahead of the game and ready, right? I think they're asking for that in anything that we do,
Exactly.
right? Is that you got to have the project in place, or
Shovel ready.
what you want to have done, shovel ready, right? And sometimes how do we do that? Right? Like,
So logistically, do we have, like, who writes our grants? Is there someone finding them and then going to the departments and saying, write these grants, or does the department find them? They write them and then go through you? Like, how does that work?
So I've just been here for 4 years now. So what my role is working with the departments, we're trying to build capacity within all the departments
Mhm.
for grant writing instead of, funneling that into 1, 2 limited people. At times, depending on the workload and the timelines, I can be more involved in some and less in other. With multiple department grants, like this LGSG grant with Third Street, that involves like municipal works, environmental utilities, economic development, planning and development. That's where I can sort of coordinate that, so that we can submit the best possible application that we can.
Are we ever like competing? Do we ever have multiple projects competing against each other for grants? Because I would imagine like you want to put in as much as you can.
A lot of times they limit us to one application.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends.
So
on
then we have to pick
Yeah.
from Medicine Hat, which do we think is going to have the best chance of being successful?
And so we've narrowed it down to a very basic 3-step process. So when a grant is open or is announced, I will send a grant, what I call a grant summary. It's 1 page, consistent, all the same categories, and send that out to managing directors, and anyone else that's interested in that. If there's, and I ask for feedback. So if there's more than one department that's interested or has a project that might be aligned, then we hold a grant review meeting. So we collaboratively come to an agreement that which of these projects will have the best success at. So that's the new part, sort of in the last 4 years. So we're trying to increase the grant revenue. We're trying to increase the number of applications, and we're trying to increase improve the quality of applications. Turning to 2026 year-to-date activity. So this slide provides a snapshot of submitted and pending competitive grant applications since January 1st of this year from community development, fleet and facilities, and parks and rec departments since January 1st. So we will, of course, continue to actively monitor and pursue competitive funding opportunities aligned with the strategic priorities.
When do you find out, sorry, through the chair, when do you find out about this then? Like,
grant.
that you get them? How long does that take?
It can take up to a year and a half.
You gotta be kidding.
It could be the next day or it could be a year and a half. Yeah, a lot of them can sit.
But how do you plan for that then? Like, really, like, you can't plan when you don't know.
So we just had an experience with a grant application. I think it was 125,000 to approve the washroom at Strathcona pool. And it was an enabling accessibility grant. And we applied for that in 2024. And they opened that program every 2 years. So we weren't funded in 2024, but in late 2025, they started digging through all the old applications, and we were approved for that this year. So luckily, it was still on the
file. Yeah. So,
it's not ideal.
And just to this is 323 of 2026 competitive grants. There's still 4.3 million of 2025 grants that are still pending.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just submitted and pending since January 1st.
First year, yeah.
Yeah. So next is the Government of Alberta's Provincial Priorities Act, which introduces a new legal framework for agreements with the federal government. Provincial entities must now obtain prior approval before entering, amending, or renewing agreements with the federal government, including grant agreements. Approval thresholds escalate based on agreement value, and agreements must align with provincial priorities. They must avoid intrusion into provincial jurisdiction and must align with Alberta's long-term fiscal plan. So to date, 4 agreements have been submitted to the province, 3 of which were under the $100,000 threshold and 1 that was over that threshold. As a result, 1 federal grant approved by Health Canada to the City of Medicine Hat has been denied under this act. So from a grant strategy perspective, from a grant strategy perspective, this legislation has introduced significant additional administrative considerations, increased complexity, longer timelines, and greater uncertainty around the return on investment for federally funded grant applications.
So you're saying, and I know this is a political hot potato, and so I don't want to, I want to be careful, but what I just heard from you, can you repeat that? It's brought significant red tape. Sorry, what were the things?
additional administrative
Yeah.
considerations, like that the admin work around the Provincial Priorities Act is astronomical. Increased complexity, longer timelines, greater uncertainty on the return on investment for federally funded grant applications.
Well, it's made it significantly more challenging for us to get the funding that we require from the federal government. There's reasons for that, and I know we've sat down and I want to be careful, but I want to understand the benefit, because all I'm hearing right now is the negative. So I'm not looking at you to answer that, Chris. I'm just, and I know that because I know there was pushback from the city on when the funding was denied, we pushed back against that. And I know that there was reasoning behind that. The provincial government felt like there were strong reasonings for that. But it's a challenge because we have to get, I'm really, it's hard for me to grasp and understand this. Regardless, it's what we have to deal with. And so we have to deal with it.
I can add to the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is that it wasn't funded, but the second most unfortunate part was it took 17 weeks to get an answer on that.
And it says obtain prior approval. So did we not obtain prior approval where we were?
We were waiting on the prior approval for 17 weeks.
And but normally, sorry, not to be a stickler, but normally do we go to the provincial, like, let's say now, would we go to the provincial government first to say, can we apply to this?
No.
We would apply and then go to the provincial government and said, we apply, is that okay with you? And if they say no, then we don't get that money.
So we apply. If we're approved, then we wait for a grant agreement template. Then we fill in an intake form. And we send it to municipal affairs. And municipal affairs farms it out to the appropriate department. They do a review, then it goes back to municipal affairs, and it comes back to us.
We've secured the federal funding first, which I'd be okay on that. So we're all good to go. Then we submit to the province to say, we've got this money, can we have it?
And they can say no, which they do. So I want to be careful because I don't want to say, like, I think it's easy to get mad at the provincial government here and say, well, why are you doing this? Why are you intruding? I find it ironic that, yeah, I gotta be careful. I just that, yeah, we
Allocated money's not coming our way.
not, and a government a government is telling us that you can't have that money. But what I don't want that to be my public comment, because I know that there's more to it than that. So what I would actually like to do, because I do think that there is a lot of I don't know if rhetoric's the right word, but there's a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this, which I can understand, because anytime someone comes and says, hey, here's some money, and someone else comes and says, no, you can't have that, that's going to create a lot of frustration. And I don't want to just throw the provincial government under the bus here and say, well, it's your fault. What I want to do is maybe offline is just understand it a little bit more from your perspective, and then go to the provincial government and understand it from their perspective, just so we can just have a better understanding of this, because I don't want to get into a pointing the finger, because I don't think that's going to help us. I really think it's how are we going to make this work, and how do we make sure that, I guess it's from the provincial government's perspective, apply for things that align with our priorities, right? But from our perspective, it's like, well, you guys are making it significantly more administratively challenging for us to apply for things. And it's not like they're then coming and saying, oh, well, we're going to double that grant, or we're going to give you more money. Like, they don't give us more money. They just get to say, they just have to veto on it.
My concern about that is, sorry, through the chair, where does that money go now that was allocated for us? Where are they putting that? That's,
They'll reallocate it to another community.
but is that fair? Once it's been allocated from the feds to come to us, that's a roadblock put up to not get that funding. So
And so at some point, if you're a funder in Ottawa and you're looking at an application from BC and you're looking at an application from Alberta,
So do other provinces not have that? Just Alberta?
I believe so.
oh my God, sorry. I'd love to understand it a lot better as to why they do that, right? So,
And we will have opportunities to sit down with our MLAs and our premier to understand that.
yeah,
Because I do think like going back to safe, like not to beat a dead horse. I know this is gone, there's nothing. And so I'm not here to challenge that or say we could or anything, but I know their response was it does not align with our priorities. And here's how we've already supported this, right? This in terms of this issue that this funding was going to support.
I don't know what the response was since the letter from the minister, but the minister's letter, they determined that the proposed agreement did not align with the government of Alberta's priorities with respect to mental health, addiction, and recovery.
where is that in the minister's report? Yeah. Or his letter.
And I think there were specific issues with that organization and some of the challenges that organization had faced before. I think there was also maybe a challenge with we had felt like the funding was going to be used for this. I think the provincial government said that wasn't clear, that like around
Warming station.
and things like that. So again, I don't want to, it's easy for me, it's easy to point the finger and say province bad. I don't want to do that. I just want to, I think regardless we have this issue, we need to work together with our provincial government to make sure that they're not, that we're aligned and working together, because I don't think it's the province's intent to be a stickler or just to say no to things. I know they care about the same things we care about. So obviously we got to work with them, and sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
But I'm sorry, I'm scared to find out what the next thing's going to be that we apply for, that they're not going to give us money for, right? Once we are approved by the feds, right? Sorry.
Through the chair, and if I may just add a little bit of context, the municipalities are a creature of the province, and I think the province has expressed a desire to regain a bit of control as to how municipalities are engaging with the federal government. This is the relatively new, so I think there is an opportunity for advocacy of some unintended consequences that they ought to be aware of, and I think that's what we can do from here is make sure that we share our voice with them and they recognize some of the challenges, and there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're right.
Okay. So looking next at funding mandates from other levels of government, provincial funding priorities are centered on 4 government-wide overarching objectives, including municipal viability, sustainability, infrastructure, and capacity building. According to the most recent municipal summary report, over half of this total funding goes to item number 3, which is core municipal infrastructure, primarily in 3 different categories. Number 1, roads and bridges. Number 2, public transit. And number 3, public security and safety. So lastly, the federal government, at the federal level, across both the allocation-based grants and the competitive grants, infrastructure and housing supply are increasingly linked. Under the renewed Canada Community Building Fund, soon to be rebranded as a stream under the new Building Community Strong Fund, housing supply and affordability commitments are now embedded principles. Budget 2025 commits $51 billion over 10 years, followed by $3 billion per year ongoing. Of that, $27.8 billion will flow through the community stream for roads, bridges, water systems, and community infrastructure. Unfortunately, preliminary program details suggest potentially restrictive eligibility conditions, including requirements for provincial cost sharing of federal funding. Mandatory reductions to development charges and limitations on certain taxes that may affect housing supply. There are also indications that proponents may need to demonstrate or secure private sector investment in order to qualify. These housing-related conditions and other federal restrictions may continue to create compliance challenges in the future. Municipalities will need to demonstrate how infrastructure investments directly support housing supply and affordability outcomes. Strategic alignment between infrastructure planning and housing policy will be increasingly necessary to secure funding, reinforcing the need for early planning and clear alignment with council priorities. That's all the good news. In closing, competitive grants revenue is becoming increasingly significant and strategic funding source as allocation-based funding continues to decline. At the same time, the landscape is becoming more complex. Tools like AI are raising the overall quality of competitiveness of grant applications, while evolving federal conditions and provincial restrictions are adding new challenges. Success will require early planning, strong internal coordination, and thoughtful navigation of both provincial and federal priorities to ensure we remain competitive and maximize the impact of city investment.
Thank you. This is really good. I think the message, I mean, there's a bunch of things from here. I think the main message for me is that ultimately this is really important. This provides us on average, sorry, what was the average if I go back to the beginning? How much do we get a year in this? Yeah, competitive, we get
7.2 last.
7.2. And if we didn't get that money, ultimately that would come through property tax or usage fees or reserves or things like that. So ultimately the provincial and federal government are providing opportunities which are helping us to provide what the community needs, right? I mean, this is an example of the provincial and federal government working with us to help keep, property taxes down or whatever, because ultimately we got to get that money from somewhere. So I think that's a great news story. Obviously there's challenges, like you said, and we need to make sure we utilize this as much as possible. And there's a lot of competition for this, right? So I appreciate this. And obviously I would love to just see how do we continue to get better and better at this. I know that's what you're here for and the team's here for. And yeah.
For the chair, we have seen strong success, as Melanie said. She hasn't been in this role for very long, but we've seen growing success. If you noted, one of the challenges from a council perspective is some of the timelines are very short. Sometimes it's very reactionary as to what possible projects might we align to get better bang for our dollar. And that often means that they aren't pre-budgeted or we need a budget amendment. So we have introduced contingency funding as part of the budget process with intentions of dipping into that for projects that might be desirable and then going back to council with the proper budget amendment after, as an example, if it's more material than what if it consumes the full contingency amount. So there's a little bit of awkwardness from a budget and planning perspective, but we do try to assess the value and try to drive efficiencies through use of contingency funds and those sorts of items.
Yeah, we can appreciate that. And I think for this council, I feel like we will be flexible where if opportunities come up and we need to be nimble, I think this council will absolutely work with the team to be like, how do we make that happen? Because at the end of the day, if you're coming to me with the challenge is ultimately we have an opportunity to get more funding for something. I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I do think that's something that we want to be able to, we want to be the the team that's helping that happen, not getting in the way of that, right? So,
Yeah, and I think like just given the restrictions and the challenges you discussed, I mean, we need to take any opportunity we can get to get that funding. So I think if that's some flexibility on our part, that's
Yeah.
for sure a role.
There's always that balance between, like chasing grant funding for, unbudgeted projects
Yeah.
versus strategically looking further ahead in our capital plans, in our, emerging trends, and being strategic about applying and accepting grants, funding, and being a little bit more flexible.
I think as long as we're in the know of what you want to do, then we can talk about it as council too, right? So I think that's a no brainer, just as long as we're in the know. Say, hey, we're trying to go after this and this is what it's going to take and this is the timeline and everything else that goes with it, then I think we'll be okay with that, right? And say, yeah, go ahead. You know what I mean? I think we're open to that, right?
That's great.
and I think it's important too for us as municipal politicians, to be working closely with our provincial and federal counterparts. I mean, we have good relationships, I think, with our provincial and federal politicians here. And so it's working closely with them, and because at the end of the day, everyone wins, right? Like whether you represent, whether you're in Medicine Hat representing provincially or federally, these are projects that affect everyone in Medicine Hat, right? And so I think it's all of us working together. So
And I think that advocacy on the council
Yeah.
perspective is very important, but I also think that I do see other communities that have internal dedicated government relations
yes,
tools that they have an advantage over us.
totally. So actually, that would be great to have maybe an additional conversation on that, because I know that's a conversation as council we've had as well, because again, it creates a disadvantage for us, right? So now, now everything we went through today, does this all come to council like exactly as is? And when would that come to council?
So that will come to council on just like
In the consent.
in the consent agenda. Yeah.
Okay. And then we can pull it out to talk, but
Hmm.
this presentation isn't coming to be presented to council.
No.
Okay.
And it is recorded. So if any
Yeah.
councilors want to
Yeah.
view it, they have access to the recording.
To me, that's the hard part about the consent agenda, right? Is that gotta pick stuff out of there and then bring it up again and you don't have slides to show and you know what I mean? You're speaking from the heart mostly, right? As to what things are and the questions that come up. So again, I'm not a fan of the consent agenda. Sorry. That's just me.
Okay,
That's just me.
because sometimes there's really good stuff buried in there.
Exactly,
And then
exactly.
to bring it out,
Yeah,
like you might not be there.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's like,
I gotta try and explain it now as to what we went through in the meeting,
Yeah.
right? Even though they could read it all, but it's not like having you here, right? To ask the questions. So that's just my concerns on that part, right? So,
And I can remind committee, you have the option of recommending to the agenda review committee whether something is presented at open council or specifically plan to have more of a detailed verbal highlight opportunity. So those are options that committee can pursue as the committee, agenda review committee would consider the agenda for council.
so I think at least in some cases, in the closed session would be good, right? Certain, not everything, but certain things. It doesn't have to be the whole presentation, but what maybe you pick out to be the most important from what we went through would be important to do in a closed, right? Not where it takes an hour and a half, like what we're spending now here, 2 hours to do it, but debrief it and have the most important parts told to the rest of council, because
Yeah, we
I
can
think
always,
we all need to be in the know.
and we can always provide highlights if you want to pull information out
Yeah.
to share with council.
I think that's important in every committee meeting, right? That you pull out stuff that we can read then and say, hey, that's great that you gave it to us. So that if I want to, I can go back into the presentation or whatever's going in the different departments and look at it and say, hey, I got questions on this, right? So I think it's important, that part. So that's just me. That might not be for everybody.
oh, I appreciate that. Thank
So
you.
I thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All we have left is action items, of which we don't have any.
We didn't have any action items. However, last meeting, we had brought forward the outstanding or the capital items and then the policies and bylaws. And I think we were going to, if there were any further questions, we could have a discussion at this meeting. Anybody want to highlight anything or point anything out?
I gotta remember them.
I did email you.
You did,
Huh?
did you have any updates to talk through that?
Which part, sorry?
Do we have any follow-up
Oh,
on any
yeah.
of that? So
And if there is anything in future that you want, if you want to review it, and happy to do that at another meeting as well. But I'll leave
Yeah,
it
well,
with you to
yeah.
highlight anything that you want to bring up from that listing.
Sure. And I don't think we have anything today, but might in the future. And
That's good to know.
yeah, you're right. No, and I specifically remember that. So, yeah.
so if there's no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.